gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. East of heaven with our new exit on 287. We can be seen on channel 20. That's our TV. Oaklander, gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV.
Good evening and welcome to the Oaklander. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo. Well, summer is just about over and it's been a wonderful time of year. We'd like to thank all of our viewers who called to tell us how much they enjoyed last month's special with Rita Moreno and our musical review that featured many talented musical guests of the past year on the Oaklander. September once again brings us to the start of the school year, and I hope that all of our younger viewers have had a summer filled with fun, new friends, and memorable experiences. Our first guest tonight will be teaching classes in theater arts to children and teens in the fall semester of the Community School of Oakland. She has a degree in Fine Arts Theater from Ramapo College and has studied under Joe Guilford in New York City. Here to tell us more of this new phase of the Community School of Oakland is Maureen Cooper. Thanks for being our guest, Maureen.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about the Community School of Oakland's new children's department?
Sure. It started last year when I brought up the idea, although I wasn't the only person to bring up the idea, to follow in the footsteps of Wayne. Wayne has a Saturday College for Children. And they said, fine, go ahead, do it. And I didn't do anything about it. But someone else later picked up on it, and they started classes in the spring, a pottery class, and I think they had a couple other classes. They had like 4 classes. And then they worked on it over the summer, and I contacted them and I said, you know, if you're gonna do a Saturday thing for kids, I'd really be interested in teaching. And they said, you know, it happens that we are gonna do more classes this year. So they went from 4 to 20, which is pretty ambitious. In 1 year, this is only the second year that the adult school's going.
That's right. Well, actually, basically 6 or 7 months old. It started with the winter semester, didn't it?
Well, I've been in 2 catalogs, so yeah, it started
Okay.
with the fall and then in the spring.
Okay.
I know now.
And you'll be working with these children from ages 6 to 18
Yeah,
in these groups?
in 3 different classes.
In 3 different classes. And what will they be learning in these courses, Maureen?
Well, my first class is 6 and 7-year-olds. That's petite performers, and that's the little kids who they don't read too well, so you have to work with things they know. Teaching projection, hold your head up, don't look down, don't twitch, don't use your hands. But basic theater stuff. We do a lot of poetry because the kids respond to poetry. It's well written, and we do things with confidence and theater games and voice and diction and modulation and breathing. I mean, a lot of it sounds like really boring.
But it's basic fundamentals.
Basic fundamentals,
kids.
yeah. But with the little kids, and then we'll have a little performance at the end. And then theater time is 8 to 13-year-olds. And that's it's a basic course. That'll be doing some scene study. And I write little scenes. See, a lot of it depends on the talent you have in the class.
I see.
I taught a class with Step by Step Studios a couple years ago, and what I did was I wrote a script based on the kids that I had. So you're giving the kids an incredible amount of confidence because they're already doing something they know to do. That character they can do. And then what they do with that is then you bolster it and you build it up. And once they've established that they can do something, then you can say, well, if you can do that, hey, this is going to be really easy, and you do something else, and you guide them another way. But that class is going to be, that's my most fun class, because those kids, that age group, they want to be Macaulay Culkin so badly.
Do they? Do they?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You never know. We may have a next childhood star from Oakland that came out of your class.
Well, yeah, but the class is mostly for fun and confidence and poise, and give the kids a little confidence.
Never know.
You never know.
You never know.
Never know, but.
I understand that the teenage classes, the 13 to 18, will stage a poetry theater using contemporary music. What's involved in this?
Well, I take lyrics from songs. I did a workshop at Westwood. I have a company, Moe's Poetry Theater. And I go around to schools and libraries and bookstores, and I do different age groups. I did my first high school one, and I was scared to death. So I took lyrics from songs, watching MTV and writing things down, and going into my niece's library of CDs and looking at the lyrics. And I took the lyrics, I broke them down into dialogues, and we stripped away the music, and we did it as a dialogue, and the kids they loved it.
Because it's music they can identify with.
And it's about stuff they can identify with, the subject matter, the music. They're already turned on. And they know more about this stuff than I do.
Yeah.
So it's not me teaching them. They bring something into the class, and it was really good. It was intense. One kid got really intense.
Well, if they do really get into the performing end of it, and if you have an opportunity to have a videotape of this, we'd love to kind of showcase something like that.
That would be great. That would be really great. I'd like to
give them a goal to shoot for or something.
Yeah, that would be nice. We're going to do a video. Well, parents are going to videotape the younger kids, but we're going to do workshops at the end. Like the parents can come in for the last class on all the classes, except for the teen class. The teen class, I would rather just videotape it and say, here, parents.
There you go.
Here you go. Here, tape it off of Access. Now I can tell them.
Okay.
Tape it off of television.
Could you tell us a little bit about your own career as an actor and what you're currently involved with?
Well, right now I'm just starting up again, getting my pictures done and going into the city for the first time in quite a while, because I have 2 kids, and I chose to stay home with them. Although if anybody called me to act, I'd put them on the side and did it. But
oh dear.
no, I know. I mean, if somebody called me to be an actor, I did it. I wasn't about to get a job.
I guess you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh yeah, and Actors Equity, and I've done tons of dinner theater, and extra work in movies, but I haven't done anything for a while. I've been teaching and doing workshops and doing the poetry theater, which I get to perform in, because I do things and I have to show them what I want to do. We just take poems and we twist them around until they're unrecognizable. And then we present them. It's sort of like a performance art kind of thing, which is exactly what MTV's doing.
Exactly.
I mean, what I used to learn going to the video kitchen in like the 70s is what MTV is mainstreaming now, which is so bizarre.
Well, I must confess to the audience here that you and I have known each other since we were in the 3rd grade.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically we both went to Washington Elementary School in Saddlebrook.
And Al took me to my dance, the 8th grade dance.
The Coronation Ball.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And as that progressed, you were involved with the Downtown Altoona Players.
That's right, when I was still in college.
Right, Johnny Stevens and Jack Bachner. Your husband Dave was involved in that also.
Yeah, that's right.
And they gave the band I was working with in that time a chance to do 2 original songs, and that was in 1980.
Yeah, well we did a lot of area bands. Every week was a new,
it was a great show.
Up and coming, yeah.
It was a great show.
It was Saturday Night Live for poor people.
That's right, and it gave me a taste of public access. And then we were forming the Oaklander, and I saw you 2 years ago, and in ShopRite.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so it does
Where I
get to
hang
be a
out.
real, a real small circle, a real small circle of life anyway. Well, back to what we're here to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Your two daughters attend the Dogwood School, and you had mentioned that the PTA has a wonderful program in March that has creative parents that come in and kind of work
yeah.
with the kids. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about this?
That's mini enrichment, they call it. And they take parents with a hobby or some people who do things professionally, and they teach 4-week classes that run about an hour and 15 minutes. Some of them run only 2 weeks, some of them run 4 weeks, but I taught a acting class 1 year, and 1 year when I was teaching in town and getting paid, I couldn't teach an acting class for free. So I helped out on a commercial class where the kids wrote a commercial and did the storyboards, and then we filmed it, and that was great. That was a good class. But it runs for 4 weeks, and I think we had 200 kids in it last year. I mean, the attendance for it is incredible, which made me know, of course it's free, because it's PTA parents and
Sure.
it's all volunteer.
Sure.
But if mini enrichment could be so successful that the Saturday school for the adult school, the community school, it really should take off. I think it's something that would be really great. Not everybody is into sports. We have a great rec program.
That's right.
It's a terrific rec program, but not everybody's an athlete,
Or cares to be,
or cares to be,
Yeah.
I was a jock, but my daughters aren't.
Well,
My daughter
there's-
takes acting in Ringwood.
We're very fortunate to at least to offer just a plethora of things to young and old. And speaking about some of the older children, how about telling a little about the adult courses at the Community School of Oakland? And are there new courses being offered for this semester for the adults?
Okay, the new department is going to be like a travel thing. They're going to go to a trip to California around New Year's, and the other trip is around Christmas time. Oh, Branson, Missouri at Christmas time. The Ozark Mountain trip. That should be
Okay.
a hoot. But
Hey. That's great.
It would be. I wish if I didn't have to go to my parents on Christmas.
Oh, dear.
Maybe I would be there. But it sounds really interesting because you get to travel with a whole bunch of people. Everything's taken care of. I have no idea how much money it is, but the brochures, it'll all be in the
The
brochures.
brochures will be out shortly.
Yeah, they'll be out sometime around Labor Day.
Okay.
And registration is in the mail till the end of September. But some workshop classes or whatever you want to call them, seminars, they're not until November. And you can pretty much sign up until the day,
Finally.
Oh, okay.
When
Finally already?
Finally already. When the courses begin, do you have a number that we can tell our audience on if they'd like to contact some people now, or should they wait until the brochure comes out around
I do.
Labor Day?
Sure I do. I have it right here somewhere. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Yes, I do. I'm sorry to be so fickle, but I don't. But I know.
So the
You
beginning.
keep talking and I'll
okay.
keep looking.
The beginning of September will be the start of the new year. Maureen is frantically trying to find the number here.
Oh, wait, maybe.
But I'm sure that there'll be updates forthcoming. And
yeah, you can. The in-person registrations are the 16th and 17th of September, and
Okay.
they're going to be in the evening at Valley Middle School. And I can't find the first.
that's fine,
page.
Maureen.
No, but
We're
I
finally out
was
of
so
time.
prepared, and now I just messed up.
I know how it is. Well,
Yeah.
Maureen Cooper will be teaching theater arts to young people this semester at the Community School of Oakland, at the Valley Middle School, and I hope many will take advantage of these economical and informative classes, and many thanks for coming and telling our viewers what's going to be in the future here. And thank you so much for coming down, Maureen.
Thanks, it's a lot of fun. Let's do this again. No, just kidding.
Absolutely. We'll return after a short break, so please stay with us.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn. Did you know that mowing the lawn can be hazardous to your eyesight? Nearly 1 million Americans have lost vision from an eye injury, and almost half happen at home while doing routine chores, using cleaning products or power tools, or even mowing the lawn. It happens every day. So be smart. Wear the right eye protection, because an accident can happen in the blink of an eye. For more information, call Prevent Blindness America at 1-800-331-2020.
Welcome back to the show. As the fall season begins, we will now turn our attention to some of the important issues that face our town. I'm sure you're aware of the plans to change our downtown into a 4-lane roadway and how that will impact this beautiful historic area of town. We know that many residents in town feel that we should not only preserve this street, but make it safe for everyone who drives a car or walks through our town. The businesses that occupy this area have the most at stake, as their livelihood depends on easy access to these stores. Tonight we would like to welcome Councilman Donald Burns and Joanne Tweedle, President of the Oakland Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Oaklander.
Good evening, Al.
Good evening, Al.
Let's start off with Don Burns. Don, what is your opinion of the recent changes being proposed for the future for changing downtown Oakland?
Al, I'll be honest with you. I'm very unhappy about what has happened and the way it has turned out at East Oak Street and Oak Street and Ramapo Valley Road. It was my understanding when I voted to approve the widening of the road there that the two right-hand lanes going in the two directions would be used for right turn, so that, as an example, if you were going south on Ramapo Valley Road toward ShopRite, you would turn right onto East Oak Street, or Oak Street rather, and go down toward the recreation complex. The opposite would be true if you were coming in the other direction. If you're going north toward Mahwah, the right-hand lane would allow you to turn into East Oak Street, which would take you into the small shopping center there that has drug fair and a post office, or take you all the way back and take you behind the shopping area over to Yorpo Avenue, because that's where a lot of people are going, is over to Yorpo Avenue.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the way it's turned out, they did not make those right turn lane only, and I think that, as a matter of fact, it's a very hazardous area. Going south toward ShopRite, since both lanes can now proceed straight ahead, when traffic is stopped there and the light changes, you only have a short distance, maybe a couple of 100 feet, where cars now have to merge back into a single lane. And I don't know what's going to happen when the weather gets bad and what's going to happen in that area, but I think it has become counterproductive, and unfortunately I hope that there's no accidents that are caused as a result of that.
Well, we would all hope that. What do you think the traffic problems are in Oakland, and do you see a way to address it?
I think there's two ways that I can answer that. I think there are two basic things that have to be considered with that section of Oakland. First of all, we have what and I think most other people, including I believe all members of the mayor and council, believes is a very hazardous situation with the traffic light the way it's currently situated at the railroad tracks by Yorpo Avenue. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that a few years ago, my wife had my daughter in the van that we have, and she was in traffic, and traffic had backed up a little bit, and all of a sudden a train was coming through and the post came down to block traffic. Unfortunately, my wife was in the van in front of the arm that comes down. She stayed in the van, and thank God the train had enough clearance that it went by the van. But I have seen occasions where people have been stopped on the tracks because of the traffic that's there, and you know, someday somebody's going to get seriously injured there. So I think that's the first problem. The second situation that I believe we have is we have to have a steady, reasonable flow of traffic. And I emphasize the word reasonable because we don't necessarily have to rush traffic through. It's not like a major highway like 208 or 287 going south. We're trying to get traffic through town at a reasonable rate where it's safe for everybody, but to get them where they want to go. And the traffic along those roads, I think, are going to two places. They're either going all the way out to ShopRite, or they're turning down to the recreation complex. Again, my understanding was that that right turn was going to be there so that people could get down to the recreation complex without being stuck in traffic. Going the other direction, again, a lot of people want to get to Yorpo Avenue. You would have the right turn there. So I think that those are the two major considerations: moving traffic reasonably through town and also eliminating that dangerous situation that you have at the railroad crossing.
Do you know of any of the alternatives that might help this flow of traffic through town? Or is there anything that's being debated?
Well, there have been a number of proposals, and as we're discussing tonight, one of the proposals is to make the whole section, as far as I'm concerned, between Franklin Avenue and East Oak and Oak Street, between those two areas, all a 4-lane roadway. And I myself am completely opposed to that. I don't think that we need to move traffic that quickly through town. As a matter of fact, I think when you start to talk to Joanne, you know, you have a small business district, and the way to get people to stop is not to rush them past all the stores, but to get them by reasonably when they have someplace to go, but also give them the opportunity that they have a chance to see what's there and to stop and possibly patronize the shops that we have in town.
Let's switch our gears to Joanne. What will be the impact on the local businesses if this roadway is expanded to 4 lanes?
Well, the first impact will be the loss of 2 stores if we follow with the current proposals. On the southbound side of Route 202, Alpha Jewelers and Hair Dynamics by Diane would be removed in order to widen the roadway to 4 lanes. And you have 3 to 6 businesses that would fail within months with the curbside parking removed, and you'd have 3 to 6 businesses beyond that within about 12 months to 18 months would probably suffer enough of a loss to have to consider closing. The curbside parking there is extremely important to them, and you have, with the proposals that are on the table now, approximately 35 businesses that are directly impacted by the traffic changes that are proposed.
Could you tell us about the mailing that the Chamber of Commerce did last June, and what were the results of that mailing, Joanne?
Well, the Chamber of Commerce, quite some time ago, decided that it was important to get the residents involved with the changes in the downtown area, because though it directly impacts the retail district, what happens in the retail district ultimately affects what happens in the residential district. If you devalue your business district, you will ultimately devalue your homes. So we decided that it was important to communicate with the residents of Oakland. And we made the decision to send a mailing. And we designed it that there would be a removable card on the bottom of the flyer that we were sending. And we asked the people, we tried to present a simple overview of what we thought was happening, and asked them that if they agreed with our position to please communicate with the mayor and council by detaching the card and mailing it in. And as it stands right now, we have just under 1,000 cards that have been sent into the Borough Hall. And there are multiple signatures on many of those cards, and there are 2 cards that are in favor of the proposed changes, and all of the rest are opposed to the changes.
2 voted nay.
Yes.
That does say quite a bit then.
I think it's a very strong statement of what the residents in town feel about how they want their downtown to look and function.
If this does go forward, Joanne, will we lose any of the historic buildings in town?
I don't believe that we will lose any historic buildings, but there are several in the downtown district that would be affected. But I don't think we would lose them.
I see. It's been reported that in other towns like South Orange are actually encouraging more residents to shop downtown. Can this be accomplished?
The village of South Orange has, back in the 80s, they expanded their downtown to 4 lanes. They suffered a penalty for that. They lost stores. They've had a series of years of empty stores. They've had a lot of problems in their downtown area. The people virtually disappeared. It was not conducive to shopping for a number of reasons. They have now worked out a plan where they are bringing back 2 lanes. They're expanding their sidewalks from 8 feet wide to 16 feet wide. They're putting in landscaping, park benches, the type of thing that will attract the pedestrians back to the community. And they're trying very hard to bring back a healthy atmosphere to their downtown.
I see. Don, these plans, how are they presented by the council?
Well, that's kind of a complicated thing because it's not just the council that's involved in it because of the fact that it's a main road. The county and the state is also involved, but primarily we've been dealing with the county. One of the problems that we have is that the county is the one who is saying that, at least to the meetings that I've attended, they're the ones that have been saying that they want that to be 4 lanes of traffic because I believe that their primary concern and the primary thing that they look at is the movement of vehicular traffic and getting it through an area as quickly as possible. As I stated earlier, I think that's fine when you're talking about a major highway like 208 or 287. You want to have the design to have a good, steady flow of traffic. I don't think that that's necessarily the case for a community like Oakland when it's going through the business and part of the residential area. I think that we are certainly concerned about the flow of traffic, but it is only one consideration and may not be the primary consideration. We have to be concerned about pedestrian safety as well as vehicular safety. And I think having 4 lanes is a potential problem.
And we've had a survey. We've had almost the better part of 1,000 citizens. We have 12,000 people in town. I mean, that's a sizable amount of the people voicing an opposition to this project. Is the county not willing to consider that the people who live, work, pay taxes in this town aren't really enthused about this project?
Well, one of the things, and I don't know, you could probably ask Joanne, I don't know if those results have been reported to the county, but you have to remember that when the county came down, as a matter of fact, we had a public hearing on some of the proposals for what might be done.
I believe that was 3 years ago, the big one at the Valley
I don't
Middle
remember
School.
the exact time frame, but there was limited response from the community. One of the things that you have to be very careful of is that I'm glad to see the chamber trying to make people aware of what potentially may be done, because too often people will do what they believe is the right thing, and there's not enough people that take an interest in what's going on. After something is done, it's too late. And by making people aware of this, I think that the chamber has done a very good service for the community. Now, hopefully when further plans are being considered, we will get a better turnout from the people so that they can see exactly what is being proposed and provide their inputs, not just people from the chamber, but many more residents will come down to the meeting and provide that input.
Okay, let's take a short break, and we'll return after this. Now, don't get up and run to the fridge right now, because you just might miss something.
Saying goodbye to your old car can be like saying goodbye to an old friend. But the parting can become sweet sorrow if that old friend saves lives through the National Kidney Foundation's Kidney Cars program. Donate your old car and the funds will support programs that can save lives. We'll even arrange a pickup, and you might qualify for a tax deduction. Call 800-63-DONATE, the National Kidney Foundation's Kidney Cars program. It puts the good in goodbye.
Hi, I'm Robert Reed, assistant coach of the Washington Bullets. You know, kids, you have to remember, real guns aren't toys. Take Eddie Eagle's advice.
Stop! Don't touch! Leave the area! Tell an adult! Yes!
Remember, if you find a gun, stop! Don't touch! Leave the area! Tell an adult! The Eddie Eagle Child Safety Program. Get it in your school from the National Rifle Association.
Welcome back to our program. We're here with Councilman Don Burns and Chamber of Commerce President Joanne Tweedle, and we're discussing the plans for changes to downtown Oakland. Don, how can the mayor and council, as well as concerned citizens like Joanne, work together to resolve this situation?
Well, I think one of the key things is, as with most other things, is communication. We have to make people aware of what's going on. People like Joanne and other concerned citizens have to attend the meetings when there are going to be these discussions so they can see firsthand what is being proposed, offer their constructive criticism for it. Hopefully it will be constructive criticism because we all have differing opinions about things, but we need that interaction. We need to get, especially for something as major as this, we need the people themselves to get themselves involved. It's very apparent that they responded very well to the survey that Joanne did because of the number of responses. When you consider 1,000 out of the number of households in Oakland, that's an extremely good response.
Certainly
and
is.
we not only need people though to respond to a survey like that, but when there's going to be a discussion on topics like this, they've got to get themselves involved and come down and see what it's all about and offer their inputs.
Al, I'd like to go back to a statement that Don made before the break. It's a very important part of the issue. He referred to the engineers concentrating on a design that moves the traffic flow through the town. And I think this is where we get into our problem. The main focus of the engineers is completely on moving traffic through the town. And there's been an interesting series of articles in several major publications. There was the first one was in the New York Times, and it was on the 30th of June, and it was about South Orange and what that community was doing with their traffic pattern. Then there was an article on the 8th of July in the Record, and it was about New Jersey being a very dangerous place to cross the street, and it gave statistics on the number of pedestrians that are killed in the state of New Jersey because evidently New Jersey motorists don't adhere to the pedestrian has the right of way when they're in the crosswalk. And that was very interesting, telling us about the problems with pedestrians. And then in the Wall Street Journal on the 7th of August, there was an article that if you changed some of the details, it would apply exactly to the problem we're sitting here discussing tonight. It's from a gentleman called Walter Kulash, who was with an engineering firm out of Orlando, Florida. And the title of the article went something like, "Towns Need More Congestion." And there is the feeling of a number of engineers that are calling themselves the new urbanists, and their focus is on creating more street parking, slower speed limits down to 15 miles an hour through towns, and creating atmospheres for the businesses where the traffic moves slower, therefore the businesses get more exposure, more people will stop and shop in the towns. They're saying we made grave errors with the automobile and traffic patterns in the 80s, and these engineers contend that they have learned from these mistakes, and they are now moving into a mode of correcting them and bringing life back to the towns. So I was very enthused by Mr. Kulash's article, and I called him at his firm in Florida, and I had a very interesting conversation with him. Because the article was talking about St. Paul, Minnesota, and it was talking about Providence, Rhode Island, and it was naming several large cities that they had done redesigns for. These people were removing one-way streets, they were adding parking, they were adding landscaping, they were changing the facades on the buildings, they were doing what they could to encourage safe pedestrian traffic back into the downtown to breathe life into the business districts. But I was curious to know, had they worked with small towns? He said they were working with many small towns across the country, and they had in fact done a program with Wildwood, New Jersey. He said they also did a program with Wildwood, Missouri. So he named a number of other small towns, and he said that that this was definitely the trend of a number of engineers. His firm is a community planning firm of about 50 people, and he is a professional registered engineer. He has done conventional highway work extensively in the state of Arizona, and he's been involved with this new movement for the last 5 years. I think this hits on the exact heart of the problem. The businesses need slow traffic, street parking, and safe pedestrian walkways. The engineers that work in traffic specialty are interested in moving cars. And I think this is where the heart of our problem lies.
Well, there is two thoughts of that. There are people who going to work, want to get from here to the other side of town. It really is a large project that takes a lot of thought, especially when you're involving with other people's property. Wouldn't you say that this is one of the stumbling blocks coming with a project of this enormity?
Well, you know, one of the things that you just mentioned is very interesting. You had said that people going to work, and I go to work just like everybody else, are interested in getting through town. But what are we talking about? We're talking about, I don't know, maybe a mile of roadway. And I remember very distinctly getting a letter from one of the residents, Naomi Lang, who is a long-term resident of the community. And she made a comment in her letter to me that I had made to a number of other people. You're going to have 4 lanes of traffic for a mile area with single lanes at both ends. Where are you rushing to? Once you get down to where it goes back to a single lane, you're not getting, you've gotten through the center of town, but that's all you've gotten through. You haven't gotten through Oakland, you haven't gotten through Wayne. You may have gotten onto 287, which is going north, you have a good opportunity. But if you're continuing up toward Mahwah, going through Oakland, you're back to a single lane of traffic.
You're back at the bottleneck.
Right. So what have you done? You've almost developed a thermos bottle. Small necks at both ends and a large opening in the middle, and they're not going anyplace.
And a rather costly thermos bottle at that.
That's
Well,
the extent of the cost, I'm afraid, has not been really analyzed, because if your primary purpose here is to move a lot of traffic through that bottleneck, the price that you're going to pay and the price that has to be paid by the small business owner, to me, is too large a price to pay for the sake of moving traffic, hurrying them through a 4-lane stretch to hurry them to a 2-lane road.
You know, there's another interesting aspect of it, Al, though. You know, at the same time that you have the rush hour, part of the rush hour is also around school time.
Right.
We have a lot of children in the community that are going to, for instance, Indian Hills High School. They're also going down to Valley Middle School. They're going to Dogwood School and to other schools. Many children may be walking down in that area. If they're on one side of the road and have to get to the other side of the road, you've got youngsters that are crossing 4 lanes of traffic to get across. Also, you're going to have a lot of seniors who have slowed down. I'm starting to do that myself. And it's bad enough going across 2 lanes of traffic. When you start going across 4 lanes of traffic, sometimes you're halfway across and the light changes again if you're waiting someplace where there's a light. We have to be concerned about the safety of the pedestrians. There are many communities that you're starting to see more signs where they have definite signs, yield to pedestrian, where it's at a crosswalk where there's no light or anything like that, where you have to yield to the pedestrian.
Must yield.
We only have a couple of hours during the day, in the morning and the evening, where you have what would be considered a rush hour. And I go through that area now, and it used to be a real bottleneck, but it has improved a lot.
Does this all kind of work in with where they're going to propose to move that traffic light?
Okay, well, I had mentioned that there were a number of plans, okay? I also had mentioned that the primary problem to me is the movement of that light. When I looked at the movement of that light, maybe I oversimplify things. To me, what you had to do was get it away from the railroad track. And what I see is 2 options. You either move the light directly to Yorpo Avenue, which moves it a little further away from the railroad tracks, but you also have the intersection where you have Maple on one side and Terhune on the other side. You could also put the traffic light down there. Now, the primary proposal was to put a jug handle in there. And I think the way it was initially discussed was that you would go past Yorpo, turn down to Terhune, which is by where Oakland Drugs is, and it would circle around and come back, and you would have the traffic light at Yorpo that you would then go across once it turned green and cross over and go straight up Yorpo.
Right.
One of the problems with that location is that it's a little further away from the railroad track, but you still have the potential for people backing up onto the tracks. Now, I've given it some additional thought, and that same idea of a jug handle can also work, where instead of putting the light there, you put the light down at Terhune. The traffic would turn at Yorpo, but it would make the right hand turn into the jug handle, come around to the traffic light, and when the light changed, you would go up across onto Maple Avenue, back in, what is it, Raritan Road?
Raritan
that
Road.
runs behind. and takes you right over to Yorpo Avenue. And that takes you much further away. But in both of those instances, all we're interested in moving is the traffic light. But the county has come in and said, well, to move that traffic light, we agree it's a safety problem. But we also want to move traffic as quickly as we can. And the real way to move traffic through the community is to put 4 lanes of traffic there. That should be a local decision that we want to make. And one of the things that bothers me about it is that the county, at least again at the meetings that I've attended, have said, well, if you don't go along with our traffic studies and you're not willing to move traffic as fast as we want to move it, then we're not going to finance this. They're the ones that put the light in at Yorpo where it is now, and they agree it's a dangerous situation. And to say that, well, we're not going to do it if you don't agree with our approach to it is wrong. That's part of the reason you have home rule. That's part of the reason that you have a local community and you have local leaders that are looking at it and trying to do what's best for the community. We're looking at it from, at least I am trying to, look at it from many different perspectives, not just simply moving traffic as quickly as possible. Move traffic as quickly as possible and you're going to have people hurt, injured, and hopefully not killed, but you always have that danger.
If by chance the county does get their proposals, what would actually happen to the northbound side of the business district, Joanne?
If the county pursues the course of action that they have been on, they want to remove the curbside parking on the northbound side of Route 202, and they'll almost effectively shut down that block. Because we did a second survey. We put volunteers out on the street from 6 a.m. in the morning until 6 p.m. at night, and we counted the number of cars that went in and out of those parking spaces. There are 10 parking spaces on the lot and on the block, and an awful lot of people look at that and say 10 parking spaces aren't very important. It's only 10 cars. It's not 10 cars. It's the turnover in an hour. And we counted between 6 in the morning and 6 at night, 245 cars parked in those spaces. Now, it was a rainy day, it was slow business, and it was 2 businesses on the block were closed. Had we counted the evening parking and the other 2 businesses open, we would have been between 300 and 350 cars in a 12 to 16-hour period. Now, that shows you that there are hundreds of people that are going in and out of those businesses. Now, remove that curbside parking, and the people will not use those businesses. They lose the convenience. They will go elsewhere. The consumer wants convenience.
Al, you also have a couple of businesses there that, if you want to call it a fast turnover business, you've got a deli there and you've got a shoe store there. You know, people are not going to park a distance from a delicatessen to go in and get a quick sandwich or something like that.
There's too many other choices.
Right, they want to park right in front, run in, get what they want, come out and be off on their way.
And that's from
Yes.
6 in the morning until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. The number of cars that went in and out of the parking spaces going to that deli, that was the major stopping. There were even cars that stopped in front of Hudson City Bank on the southbound side, ran across the street to the deli, and went back to their cars. A very little illegal mover, but it was done.
Well, in closing, this question will be for both of you. What are we to anticipate in the near future with this? And how can the residents of Oakland continue to be involved before a decision is made on this issue?
Well, the plans have not been finalized. There will be more public discussion of it, and I think it's important that when there is, the people have to come down and see for themselves what it is. Even without waiting for the plans and seeing the plans, just go down and imagine what it's going to be like with 4 lanes all the way from Franklin Avenue to Oak Street or East Oak Street. See if you want to be in a situation where you're going to be walking across that area. I know that there's a resident of the community that is going around constantly helping to keep our streets clean. She goes around and picks up things. I'd hate to think of that woman walking along there with 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, zipping along. You get bad weather or something like that, somebody loses control, and you've got a potential for a great disaster.
Sure.
Well, I think that one of the most important things is pedestrian safety in the downtown. It's a very important thing. I think that that's one of the primary considerations, and I think when we have a public meeting on this, I think it's imperative that the residents come down to participate in it. And we also have, with the chamber, a telephone tree, and if the residents would like to get involved in our telephone tree, they can contact me. My business number is 337-7117, and they are free to call if they want to get involved with this.
That's a wonderful idea.
Al, could I just mention one last thing?
Quickly, please.
Joanne happened to mention to me that I believe she had a recent meeting with some of the people in the county. And one of the statements that I heard her mention was that they are interested in what the local community feels. I hope that that is really the case, because as I mentioned, I think that we should have a large say in what we do with the downtown area, not have something forced down our throat, because if they try to force it down my throat, I am completely opposed to doing that. If it means leaving the light where it is in a dangerous situation, I am not going to succumb to the county engineer telling us that the only way you're going to get that dangerous situation rectified is to put 4 lanes of traffic in, because I think you're compounding the problem.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming down. Donald Burns is an Oakland councilman, and Joanne Tweedle is president, the 6th-time president of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you both for coming down and expressing your views here on the Oaklander. And please stay tuned after these words. Hello, it gives me great pleasure to be in South Orange with the village president, Mr. William Calabrese. And he's agreed to speak with us on some of the developments that have happened in the widening of the downtown area in South Orange. Thank you, Mr. Calabrese, for agreeing to speak with us.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for having me as your guest.
What has happened to South Orange's downtown area in the early 80s?
Well, to tell you the truth, Al, what we're trying to do here in South Orange is we're taking a town that's been urbanized and we're trying to bring it back to more that suburban type of atmosphere. And one of our biggest problems is the thoroughfare that runs through the village of South Orange. We have a 6-lane highway, which was very undesirable even in the 1920s, the 40s, and the 60s when it was fought. But they never won, and the county always got its way, and they made this tremendous highway that allowed cars to facilitate coming through the village. And because of that, as time went on, it became more difficult and more difficult for businesses to thrive on South Orange Avenue, and we started to lose that village feeling. So now, like I said, we've been almost urbanized. So we've been spending the last 2 or 3 years spending a lot of money trying to reverse the process, narrow the main thoroughfare, and bring in more businesses, and make the town feel more suburban again.
So what has been the result of this, that more businesses are coming in?
Yeah, definitely. In the last year, well, a year ago we had 16 empty stores in South Orange. Now we have 3. And a lot of this is happening because of the anticipation of us narrowing our main thoroughfare coming through the village. Because like I said, there's people that live on one side of the street that have never even crossed the street to go to a business on the other side of the street because the road and the traffic seems to move so fast. The people are intimidated to go from one side to the other side. So we have senior citizen housing in this community where people have never even seen the other side of the town because they just can't cross the street.
So what is being done now to help revitalize the business district? What type of businesses are finding it friendly to come back to South Orange?
Well, we're finding really the upscale types of businesses, you know, where we don't have the old-fashioned, well, I'll give you a good example is we haven't had a bakery in South Orange in 21 years. Now we have 2 bakeries that have opened in South Orange. We have 2 coffee bars that have opened in South Orange. So the trend is it's more like an upscale, like a New York type of atmosphere coming in to open up businesses, very upscale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what we want to do because this is an upscale community. We have basically white-collar workers, doctors, lawyers, mostly professionals, professors, things like that. We have a lot of people that work and live in New York City, stockbrokers. They take the train. And in the last few months, the new train connection came through South Orange called the Midtown Direct. And we were the first stop on that particular line. See, in the 1920s, South Orange developed around the train station. It brought the rich people from New York City to come here to live in this community, and they built these magnificent homes. And like I said, as things tend to go, people try to speed traffic through, and they lost that whole atmosphere of what they came to this community for. And we started to lose the residents. The residents started to move out more into the suburban communities like the Bernardsville and probably up where you are in your community, Oakland, places like that. And we started to lose these type of people. And what's happening now is because of our trend, and we're trying to give this mentality back that we want to return to the suburban lifestyle, more people are starting to come here again from New York, and we're developing this type of air to the community.
The type of businesses that are being attracted back in there, are people from the town of South Orange? Are they starting new businesses, or is it people that are
That's a
coming
very
in?
astute question. In fact, that's what's happening. It seems like the people who live in this community really want to come back and contribute more of themselves to this community, because they want to thank us, I guess, not knowing myself, but the people in town that are being so enthusiastic to revive this community. So they're actually spending their own money to revitalize this community. Like I said, the two bakeries, one of them is a resident in town who was a stockbroker. She gave up her job to open up this bakery. And we have a new diner in town, like a 1950s diner, and it's doing extremely well. And in the same situation, a woman gave up a very fluent job in New York City, and she opened up a diner now. She's there morning, noon, and night, and she really gets a kick out of it, and she's doing very well. So I think that was a very astute question. Is the people in the community that want to come back in, and a lot of them are opening up these businesses.
That's wonderful. Well, we're sitting in your lovely chambers here, and this must go back to an earlier part in the century.
Oh, sure.
And do you have many people who oppose change? Because we must go forward, we must advance. But here we have a mixture of the old, and you're trying to bring in some new changes.
Sure.
How do you blend that in to keep everybody happy? And are there people who actually oppose what you're doing?
Well, we try to work very carefully. The most important thing in all this redevelopment is to keep the public informed. There's no secrets. If I learn of something, I'm at a meeting and everybody knows about it. Whatever the general public is here or the newspapers, there's no secrets. And I want to make sure, in fact, I have a committee almost like it's like a cabinet in town. It was never done before, where I have like 7 advisors. And what I did is I try to choose people from different areas that they can get back to more of the community. Like I have the president of Chamber of Commerce, or I have the planning board chairman, and I have, let's say the Board of Adjustment chairman, and what's another one? We have a Main Street program. I have the Main Street president. So when we discuss the developments in the community, and we discuss some of the propositions that have been brought to myself, I let them have the complete input of their own expertise. So I'm not working in a vacuum. Like, because you're the president of a Chamber of Commerce, you might give me an aspect on a certain project that I might not see. But meanwhile, while you're sitting there, you're learning everything that's going on, so you can go back to your Chamber of Commerce and you say, well, I was just in the meeting with Bill Calabrese last week on Tuesday because we had our downtown coordinating committee, and there's a proposed, let's say, a hotel coming into the South Orange, and we discussed it. What do you think about this? Now he goes back to his own Chamber of Commerce, and they discuss it again. So now my next meeting, when he comes back, he has maybe more ideas to give us. So as we move on with this development, the whole community should be completely aware of what's going on. So they don't have to come to a meeting and say, hey, we never heard about this. In fact, right now there's a meeting going on right here in this town hall, which you heard was a little boisterous at times, because those are some of our dissenters. But we try to keep them so informed, it's hard for them to argue, because there is no secrets from them. They're talking now about a proposed parking deck, which I don't want to build. But I'm building it because with this parking deck comes a triplex movie that's going to show art films, as well as a legitimate theater in the downtown area, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Paper Mill Playhouse, but they've shown a big interest in having an auxiliary theater here in South Orange if we can give them the square footage, because of this parking deck, which allows it a lot easier for people to park and go right into the theater and see what's going on. So like I said, there's a mixture, but we're not hiding this. The public knows exactly what we're talking about with this particular deck. It's not like we're saying we're building it. Right now we're discussing it, and we're moving in that direction, but they know as much about it as I do right now.
What other capacities you are a local businessman in town?
Sure, I'm a pharmacist. I came to this community about 21 years ago. My wife and I took what we made when we got married, and we parlayed it into a nice business, and we've been very successful in this community.
So you're quite well known in town.
Well, when you're a pharmacist, people get sick sooner or later, so you get to meet almost everybody. And like I said, I owe an awful lot to this community, and I'm trying to give it back. You know, sometimes people don't realize that, but you know, you live in a town and they don't appreciate everything that goes on, and I certainly do. So I think that most of the residents are, you know, it's so nice to have somebody walk up to you once in a while and say, boy, you're doing a great job. And I say, it's not me, it's you. We're all doing it together.
It's very
Nobody
refreshing.
can do it by itself.
Very refreshing. Has there been any involvement from the state or the county in the current changes?
Oh, an awful lot. In fact, going back to the narrowing of the avenue, it was awful hard for us to impress upon the county engineer because he's from the old school. So the old school was that you had to expedite traffic through an area. They don't take into consideration all the negative effects of speeding this traffic through an area. That what happens is, like I said, you lose that little intimacy that a community might have. The businesses before that benefited because the traffic was slower coming through, where people would actually park their cars, get out, cross the street, go to either side of the street, go shopping, is all lost. So we're trying to convince this to the engineer, and he's starting to come along our way. But other than that, all the freeholders, as well as our county executive, are 100% behind this project. The state is 100% behind this project, because the trend today is opposite of what it used to be, like I said, with speeding traffic through. People are looking more into mass transportation again, because they're just going to become a limit of how many cars can travel on the streets. And someplace online, if you make it a little bit more inconvenient for people to take all these cars out, they're going to look for alternate means of transportation. And that's what we're trying to do here. In fact, we're going to even have a municipal bus that's actually going to go around picking people up throughout the community and bring them to the downtown area, like a free bus, and bring them back home.
That's a marvelous idea. Well, in closing, Mr. Calabrese, how did you familiarize yourself with the proposed changes that was happening in my town of Oakland? How did you've been following that, I understand?
Sure. Well, almost anything that has to do with this type of concept of traffic control, et cetera, is very interesting to me, so I try to follow all of this. And Oakland is a very good example, because here they're trying to do just the opposite, and it might take 20 years and they'll find out that it failed. You want to hear the interesting thing? A lot of times when we were discussing this about narrowing the avenue, we would get engineers that would come to us from the old school, and he said, every place that this has been done, where you tried to take a wider street and make it narrower, it has failed. But they can never show us an example, because it hasn't failed. The trend today throughout the country is to take wide thoroughfares and make them narrower through the centers of town, because everybody wants to go back to that old-time feeling. They don't want to go to that thing where they feel like they're impartial and there's no connection with their communities. They want to come back. Even the malls. People don't want to go to a mall anymore. They want to go shopping in their downtown. They want to feel like they're contributing to the community, because in the long run they realize as their downtown prospers, ultimately they're going to be paying less taxes. See, as I try to explain to people, there's two people that pay taxes in the community: the residential property owner and the commercial property owner. If the commercial property owner is suffering because he can't get decent rents for his businesses, because there's no stores that want to rent in his thing, he's paying less taxes. So what happens is the burden of the tax goes on the property owner, because you have to collect the same taxes to pay, to pay the bills. So because your downtown is failing, you're paying more taxes. So someplace along the line you got to say, hey, what am I doing this for? It's easier for me just to go into my downtown. I'll buy my meats downtown. I'll buy my shirt downtown. I'll buy my plumbing supplies. Why do I want to go to a mall? Because they're not doing anything to make my life better. I might think I'm saving $10, but in the long run, I'm paying $400 more in my taxes. And if people are starting to think that way now, especially this community, they're realizing it. So a year or two ago, if you walked outside in South Orange at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, you didn't see anybody walking the streets. You go out there with me now, and you'll see that there will be about 50 or 100 people walking around where the cafes are, because they're coming back to this community, because they know they're not only benefiting the town, they're benefiting their own pocketbooks.
Well, we're going to leave it at that.
Right.
I want to thank the village president, Mr. William Calabrese, for spending some time with me and expressing his views on what they're doing in downtown of South Orange. And I hope that this type of project will turn people friendly instead of turning on each other.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being
me. My
with us.
pleasure.
Well, this brings us to the close of another show. Our thanks to our remote team for that fine job that they did this month. I want to thank our guests tonight for taking the time to be with us and to talk about what they truly believe in. It is the only peaceful way to bring about change. We hope that more people who like to express their thoughts will continue to contact us. We will continue to focus on issues such as the cleanup of Camp Tamarack and the eventual buildup of the River Bend Club. We must maintain a vigilant watch over projects that will change the face of Oakland forever. Our thanks to Rudy Dolce for rerunning past Oaklander shows on Channel 19, and Roy Mengelsdorf, Public Access Coordinator of Franklin Lakes, for the same on Channel 20 for programs like Jack's Cooking. Most of all, I'd like to thank you for watching the Oaklander. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo, and we'll see you next time.